Hello again, everybody. We're back today with another classic album song ranking, our 21st in the series with Sam St. John. Today we're here with Jeff Whitcher, Jeff Whitcher's Vinyl Destination. Jeff, thanks for doing this. We always appreciate having you on. Of course, Jeff was here for Pet Sounds, one of our earlier ones. So if you haven't seen that, check it out with all the other 20 we've done so far. They're all in the description below. Today it's Sticky Fingers, 1971 Rolling Stones classic. I figured nobody better than Jeff to go through this album, discuss it, rank the songs, that kind of thing. So that'll be fun. Yeah, I've got it here as well.
Mine's in the car.
His is in the car. So this will be a fun one. To me, it's one of the best Stones albums. I mean, it's hard to pick a great number one Stones album. I like Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers pretty much 1 and 1A. 5 or 6 other classics to debate. So anyway, guys, this was a tough ranking. There's only 10 songs, very, very difficult. And what we usually do is go bottom to top, of course, 10 through 1, give a ranking at the end. So Jeff, what was your first introduction to the Stones or Sticky Fingers? Tell us a little bit about your history with the band.
Yeah, the song Brown Sugar is one of my earliest musical memories. When I think back to my childhood and I think of songs that I remember, like as very young, just hearing them on the radio or maybe on my, mom or dad's stereo. I mean, that riff to Brown Sugar is just such, I hear that and I have like this visceral reaction. Like I feel all of a sudden like I'm 5 or 6 years old again, and it just still sounds so fresh when I listen to it. But that was my first introduction to it. And then I had the Hot Rocks compilation, and I think that's when I was introduced to Wild Horses. And then I didn't actually pick the album up until I think they came out with the CD remasters, which was like in the 1990s. And then that's when I got to hear like some of the deeper tracks. I'd heard like Bitch on the radio, I'd heard Can't You Hear Me Knocking. But songs like Moonlight Mile or I Got the Blues or even Sway, I just never heard before. And it blew me away because I really didn't think, for me, the Stones were all about the 60s. I'm a big Brian Jones era fan. And so I always thought, well, the Stones, they dropped off in quality in the 1970s. And this was absolutely not true. And it was sort of listening to Sticky Fingers. And then after Sticky Fingers, I get into Exile on Main Street. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm totally missing out on one of their most prolific and, interesting decades. Because the Stone really, not to get too much into a history of the Rolling Stones, but in the 70s, they jumped around in so many different styles and so many different genres. And in 1971, they laid claim to the fact that they were the greatest band in the world. And it's really kind of hard to argue when you think about it, because the only real competition they had after the Beatles broke up was the Who. The Who had come out with Who's Next, but Led Zeppelin hadn't yet put out Led Zeppelin 4, so they weren't really the juggernaut that they became in the 70s. And some of the best bands of the 70s were not yet formed and putting out music. So, yeah, I think it's entirely fair to say, 1971, the Stones were the greatest rock and roll band. I mean, you can argue Black Sabbath or Deep Purple, but, just in terms of like a mainstream rock and roll band, it doesn't get any better than the Stones.
Totally agree. How about you, Sam? I know you're a little bit younger than us. What was your
I'd hate to argue with Jeff, but I'm pretty sure in '71, Question Mark and the Mysterians were still at the height of their prowess. So,
you got me there.
Yeah. So it's a common mistake. No, I'd say Sticky Fingers was the first Rolling Stones album I listened to in its entirety. Other than that, before that, I knew all the hits, obviously. So I knew Brown Sugar was on the radio. It's still on the radio in my area. Not very much, not as much as, like You Can't Always Get What You Want or songs like that, or Satisfaction, But for me, obviously, as an introduction to the Stones, for me, it was perfect because it's the closest probably the Stones got to a country album. And at this time, Keith Richards was hanging out with Graham Parsons quite a bit. There's still some rumors in terms of some of the writing credits, whether Graham had a hand in more of the songs than he did. I know in college, I was introduced to the song Dead Flowers through Townes Van Zandt. A buddy of mine was like, "Hey, have you heard the song?" And then I was like, "Well, hey, did you know this was a Rolling Stones song?" Because I looked into it, and he's like, "I didn't know. I thought it was a Townes Van Zandt song, one that he did before he died." So I mean, it's got some great stuff. It's got, I mean, obviously some covers with like, "You Gotta Move" is an old blues song, and they're sticking true to the blues. They've also got the rock on it. They've got the country. They've got the orchestral with Moonlight Mile. It's just it covers the gamut, but it thematically it all works, and that's what's so cool about it. So I mean, it's as of this point, I haven't heard every Rolling Stones album, but it's my favorite Rolling Stones album. So
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Of course, I'm older than you guys. I grew up in the '60s with AM radio, which was king, and I know all the hits kept coming every year on the radio: "Paint It Black," "Ruby Tuesday," "Satisfaction," "Jumpin' Jack Flash," "Honky Tonk Women," all those massive hits when Brian Jones was still in the band, of course, and then he dies in '69, and here comes Mick Taylor to replace him. And I think it was a huge addition. I like both eras, of course, but this really turned him into a rock band, like Jeff was mentioning, the best rock band from the '70s, and even you can say in the '80s they had some wonderful albums as well. And each one is a little bit different, but they all kick ass. And glad to be doing this, guys, with you today. All right, let's get into it. Jeff, you're going to go first, then Sam and myself ranking these bad boys. So what do you got at number 10?
My number 10, and I feel like we always have to preface this. I love every song on this album. So, when I start ranking, when I start talking about the ones that I rank the lowest, it's going to sound like I don't like them, but I'm just giving you the reason why they're not as high as some of the other ones. But number 10, I'm going to go with "You Gotta Move." For me, it's just a little bit too one note. I understand it's a cover of a blues song, but if I could drop one song off the album, it'd probably be that one. I mean, the Stones have a lot of great blues songs, and I do like this one. I do enjoy it. It's very kind of a stripped down, lo-fi sort of a just acoustic guitar, kind of a riff there, and a little bit of slide guitar. But yeah, I like it. It's just I think there's just the other songs are just that much better.
Cool. Sam?
for me, it's going to be I Got the Blues, just because I don't know, it's like to me it's Mick Jagger kind of just the opening notes of it just kind of throw me off with just how he's kind of going up in that register of his voice, which I wouldn't say Mick Jagger has a register like Roger Daltrey. He kind of follows more in line with like the blues guys, the country guys. Just that intro that "As I stand by your flame, I get burned," and he's like trying to hold that note up there. I'm like, get over puberty first before you finish the notes. But I mean, like Jeff said, I like every song. It's got great horns on it. That's another thing. This album has some great horns on it, and this is one of those that kind of builds up, kind of like an old like Motown song almost from the '60s. So that's kind of cool. Obviously, like Bobby Keys is hanging out with him a lot at this point and was with him up until he died. So just that added element to their stuff really kind of put them up a level in the '70s, like Jeff was saying earlier. So number 10 is I Got the Blues. Just I don't care for the singing in it that much, but I like the horns a whole lot.
Yeah, we all have three different ones at the bottom here. My number 10 is Sister Morphine. Kind of druggy, dark, depressing. It fits the Stones lifestyle that they were living, of course, so it fits in that way. But honestly, it's just my least favorite. It was partially written by Marianne Faithfull, who was one of the girlfriends, I believe, of Mick or Keith. I think it was Keith. She released it as a B-side in '69, even before this album came out. Ry Cooder on slide guitar. I don't know. It's not a bad song at all. I mean, you guys are obviously going to have it above number 10, but it's the one I would least listen to on this album. So it's my number 10.
All right, my number 9 is going to be I Got the Blues. I think for the same reasons kind of Sam mentioned, Mick Jagger singing like he's having a bowel movement. And I do like the horns. I mean, I think the horns elevate the song. I kind of like the tremolo guitar effect on it. I like it kind of builds. It definitely sounds like a song Otis Redding would have covered if
Yeah.
Exactly.
Otis still been alive. So yeah, I like it. It's just not one of my top picks on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Number 9 for me is going to be "Bitch," just because I don't know. It's a good song. It is. Some funny lyrics about calling my name. I salivate like Pavlov's dog. With that experiment, it's just not the. Again, it kind of goes with the lifestyle. I think that they said it has to do with like they were just getting fed up with the female fans and like the groupie lifestyle. It's they were all passing the women around, like they were French fries in a McDonald's container. But so I mean it's a good song. I don't have a whole lot to add to it. But it's at the bottom of my list. Well, second to last.
I like that metaphor, Sam. You got to write a song about that.
About passing the girls around like they're fries and a
For French
takeout
fried
order.
women. Yeah, call it
French fried women. Yeah,
That's good.
salty and oily, but we still crave it.
And
Yeah,
there's
number 9 for me. I've got the bowel movement song. I got the blues. That's a great metaphor in itself. You guys, I have written down exactly what Jeff said. It's along the lines of Otis Redding. It's got that slow paced blues, soulful vocal, almost gospel, and then it's got the brass coming in. Billy Preston on the Hammond organ, Bobby Keys. I mean, excellent players. I like the versatility of Mick's voice here too, because he can give you the country, the blues, the soul, the flat out rock and roll, everything you need. He's very versatile. I think people lose track of that because of his stage presence and the rooster running around with the head bobbing and this and that. He's a great frontman for a reason. He can do it all. So I've got that at number 9. I got the blues.
For my number 8, I am gonna go with Moonlight Mile. And I feel like Sticky Fingers is definitely very top loaded. Like side 1 is definitely my favorite 2 sides. And Moonlight Mile, I love it. It's a great album closer. I love kind of that. It almost sounds like a, oriental sort of guitar strumming at the beginning. It's sort of an interesting kind of a phrasing that Mick Jagger gives it as well, but I love, kind of like the strings. I love how it builds. I got no issue with this song, but, just in terms of the Stones flexing their muscles, I'm a big fan of the Barn Burners on this album.
Yeah.
So kind of the quieter stuff is going to be a little bit lower on my list, but I've got no issue with Moonlight Mile. I think it's a fantastic closer. Maybe not as strong as you can't always get what you want, but for me, it's the perfect way to close out an album like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, for me, number 8 is going to be Sister Morphine. Talked about it earlier. Again, it fits the Stones in the early 70s to a T. I mean, we've all seen the pictures of Keith Richards at this point, and very shortly thereafter Ronnie Wood when he would join. Looking like they're knocking on death's door. Every album insert. Again, another great vocal by Mick Jagger. They're kind of personifying the drugs that they're taking, Sister Morphine, cousin cocaine. Again, it's dark, but I mean I kind of like it. Sometimes those darker songs creep up on me more than I think they would. Again, very bluesy, fits right in line with what styles they were taking on at the very beginning of their career. Again, not much more to add to it, but again, I like it a whole lot. And at this point, I mean, I really like the last 7 on a different level.
My number 8 is Sway. I hate it putting it this low because I do like it. Pure raw blues rock. Mick Taylor, in fact, wanted a songwriting credit on this, and there's speculation that it led to him some friction in the band and led to him eventually leaving because he really thought that he wrote a lot of this and it was a Jagger Richard's tune. A great guitar solo at the end here by Mick Taylor as well. I like Charlie Watts drumming. I like everything. Nicky Hopkins on piano. This is a hard rock lover's delight, this song. It focuses mainly on the instrumentation, less on song structure and melody, is the stuff that I am partial to. So that's probably the reason it's 8. But it is a great Stones song. I know Gary, Physical Format Rock and Roll, it's one of his favorites as well. So that's number 8 for me, Sway.
Yeah, good one. We're on number 6 now.
7.
7. Okay, my number 7 is going to be Sister Morphine. And it's interesting because in the early part of the 70s, it's almost like the hangover from the 60s, because you had songs coming out that were very much sort of exposing the reality of addiction and drug use. You had John Lennon's Cold Turkey, you had Sister Morphine, you had Needle and the Damage Done. Neil Young was coming out with songs like that. And so, for the first time, you kind of had like, oh, you know what? Drugs really aren't all they're glamorized to be. And, Sister Morphine, I believe, was written because Marianne Faithfull OD'd, or, she had some trouble with drugs. And so I feel like, and I don't know if I'm misremembering this, but I feel like Miss Jagger wrote it like at her bedside or something, about the effects of withdrawal and, heroin addiction. So it's a harrowing kind of a song, but, for me, again, I love it. And, sort of like, you almost see Mick with an eye to Keith Richards when he's singing about this, because, Keith certainly was going through his own struggles with addiction and heroin use and getting in trouble with the law. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely were reflecting what was going on in the band and in larger society.
Absolutely. Yep. Right. Harrowing's the great word too. It is a harrowing tune. All right, Sam, 7.
Number 7, you just mentioned it, Rich, Sway. I really like this song a lot, and I forget until I was re-listening to this album to rank this recently how much I like the song. I love how Keith Richards, Keith Richards isn't known to be a great singer, but his harmony with Mick, I like. It's kind of almost like a shrill high harmony. And he did it up until, recently when, he was, just his voice is almost completely shot now. But that harmony works so well with this song. I think that's what puts it higher. It's because, Keith's my favorite member of the Stones. And so every time he's, heard vocally, I really am drawn to those songs. And I love that whole, it's just the demon in your life that's got me in its sway. I think it's really well done. There's not a lot of depth to the song, but again, musically is what puts it a little bit higher up than those last 3 that I mentioned. And like I said, I really like how Keith sounds on it with Mick. So it's number 7.
Very good. My number 7 is You Gotta Move, country blues cover, Mississippi Fred McDowell. This is really stripped down, unlike what you would think of the Stones, but once in a while they add one of these little hidden gems. I like Mick's voice in it. I really don't mind it with the Southern accent. And it's like, you got the blue. It's pretty interesting the way he he throws that in there. It's got electric slide guitar and an acoustic guitar by Keith Richards. Both guitarists excel on this one. And right in the middle of the pack, number 7.
All right. My number 6 is going to be Dead Flowers. Yeah. I like the country, rock stylings of it, the whole Graham Parsons influence. I love Mick Jagger putting on that Southern drawl, Kentucky Derby Day, of that little twang that he gets in his voice. And yeah, it's a charming song. There's no way around it. It's got a cute little lyric. And take me down, little Susie. Is there ever more rock and roll name than Susie? To include the chorus. But yeah, I love it. It's just a cool little country track. I love it way more than Faraway Eyes, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. So, it's my number 6.
Good one.
Yeah, I agree. Faraway Eyes is so much more put on than Dead Flowers.
Yeah. And I think that's more kind of like a gospel, like TV preacher kind of a manner, like a voice and accent and mannerisms that he's using on that as kind of a send up. It's
Yeah.
Dead Flowers, I don't think is a parody in any way. I think it's a tribute. I think Faraway Eyes is like a parody to some extent.
Sure. Yeah. Number 6, I know this is gonna ruffle some feathers. Is Can't You Hear Me Knocking? Again, probably the heaviest song on the album. Just that crunchy guitar with the guitar playing at the same time as Mick is shouting, Can't you hear me knocking? I like it a lot. Again, if you'd have asked me 3 or 4 years ago about this song, I wouldn't have even known it existed. Because I'm fairly new to this album as a whole. Really like it. I think maybe the reason it's kind of in the middle of the pack for me is that it's got that extended kind of outro that goes on maybe a little bit too long. Some people might like it. I mean, obviously you all haven't talked about it yet. But I mean, yeah, I like the rock and feel to it. It's again showing the Stones' versatility. I mean, you have a song like Dead Flowers that Jeff just mentioned. And then you have this song, you would think that would be 2 different bands, but
Right.
it's, the greatest rock and roll band of in the world, the Stones. So I like the song a lot. I wish I could have seen the song done live, especially this time of their career. So number 6 for me.
Yeah, my number 6 is Bitch. One of you guys, Sam, had it earlier. Great energy, killer riff, the horns. There's so much to like. It's hard rock personified. Charlie Watts on the drums really drives this one, and yeah, it's just a great song. On most albums in the '70s, it would be 1 or 2, but on this one, it comes in at number 6. I love the energy of it. And it just rocks, man. So
Yeah, I feel if any of these songs had been on any of their later '70s albums, that would be like the best song on the
yeah,
album.
exactly. Yeah, I agree. All right, we're into the top 5 here.
All right, number 5, I'm gonna go with Sway. Such an interesting, and it's got that intro, the beginning where it's like that studio, you're sort of like hearing the little bit of the studio chatter, them warming up before it kicks into that killer riff. But yeah, I love the lyric. I love how it just kind of, it's taken at a very leisurely kind of a pace. And it's just the Stones doing what the Stones do best, Keith Richards and that interplay that he's got, there with Mick Taylor. It's a song that the Rolling Stones stopped doing songs like this after Exile on Main Street, and I feel like this is like right in their wheelhouse. But for me, it's a great way to kind of cool off after Brown Sugar.
Yeah.
So yeah, number 5.
Yeah, it's definitely a great placement on the album.
It is.
Well, speaking of, number 5 for me is the big hit on the album, Brown Sugar. Classic song. I know it's one the Stones just recently booted from their set list due to some of the subject matter, but regardless, it's a rocking song. What a great album opener. Probably one of the best. You could easily make any bracket that Jeff and his fellows put up on the Thursday night streams. Of course, Come Together would get walloped by it based on the votes from the fans.
Don't get me started, Sam.
I know, yeah.
It's so fresh.
It's still fresh. Yeah, there were some channels that I had to unsubscribe from as a result, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, again, I mean, Brown Sugar, but obviously you have that great, you should have heard him coming just about midnight with Keith, singing the high part. It's just a killer rock song. It's classic '70s rock. I mean, the '70s were starting to form their own sound now at this point. A year into the decade. So, I mean, I can't really say much more about it. It's just a killer rock track. It's classic Rolling Stones.
Yeah, my number 5 is Can't You Hear Me Knocking, which you know, you could argue would be number one. I mean, it's 7 minutes, 15 seconds. The second half of it's like this extended jam session. You get congas, and they had a nice touch. It sounds almost like a Santana song with the percussion at the end. It got saxophone again by Bobby Keys. Great drumming. Lots of great stuff. Drug references, of course. Cocaine Eyes, Speed Freak. I mean, they're hitting all the all the key terms of the time. But it's a real jam session, especially the second half, where it just, I think it was done in one take too. It was not something they spliced together. It was just them letting go and being the Stones. And damn, it's a great song. Number 5 for me.
Okay. My number 4, I feel like in 1970, like they lifted this moratorium on recording artists that you couldn't use the word bitch. And a song, I mean, you had like Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, you had David Bowie, Queen Bitch, you had Elton John, The Bitch Is Back,
Right.
you had Rolling Stones with Bitch. It was like all of a sudden it was like, we can say the word now.
It entered public domain.
Yeah, everybody's going to use it now. But yeah, I love that. It's a great, Keith Richards using like a Chuck Berry style riff. I love the horns on here. It gives it that little oomph. But it's just a crazy balls out rocker. And it's, the Stones. Some of my favorite songs are songs like this. That the Stones just kind of let it rip. And it's a song they couldn't have done in the Brian Jones era. They just didn't have the chops to be able to do it. And in 1971, it's like, all right, here we go. Side one. Holy crap, what a beast side one is. But yeah, Bitch is going to be in my number 4.
Nice.
For me is surprisingly the cover of "You Gotta Move." I love the slide. I love like the ba da 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 like that Keith's doing the whole time. I mean that Mick's doing the whole time. I first heard the song by a guy named Paul Thorne, who's a singer-songwriter. Kind of has a lot of humor like in his stories that he tells. He's a modern guy, but he's lived hard, and I heard him do the song more upbeat, almost like in a gospel style. You could definitely like this song. You can definitely hear like Led Zeppelin doing this song, like on Led Zeppelin 3. But that slide on it, just that jangly, almost very very metallic sounding slide guitar. Again, it's just the Stones sticking to their roots from the song, telling people we're still a blues band at heart, which is what Paul McCartney still calls them these days, just a glorified blues cover band. But yeah, there was some bad blood there a few years ago. But I like the song a lot. I love the instrumentation. I like the Mick Jagger singing. I even like the monotonous nature of it. I'm not even a big blues guy. Like I don't think I own any straight blues records. But I like the song a lot. So it made the top 4.
Very good. My number 4 is Dead Flowers, country twang, Mick, showing off the band's versatility. I mean, this is the world's greatest rock and roll band, and they're throwing a flat out country song at you, along with the blues. Just killer. I like Take Me Down, Little Susie, Queen of the Underground. The lyrics they're throwing in. It's not. It could have been a country hit. It's that good. I mean, the influence of Graham Parsons. You guys mentioned a lot of the obvious stuff here. So that's my number 4, Dead Flowers.
All right. My number 4 is going to be Wild Horses. Love that one. And they actually, if you've seen the documentary Gimme Shelter, there's a scene of them in Muscle Shoals and they're performing this song. So that song had been around since 1969. I don't know if it was if they had it written around the time of Let It Bleed when they were recording that album or not, but it's just classic Stones. Wild Horses, Couldn't Drag Me Away. It's just such a powerful imagery. And I think this was another Marianne Faithfull inspired song as well. Because I think, she had that overdose and Mick Jagger was professing his love to her, even though he would dump her like, yesterday's newspaper and hook up with Bianca, his next girlfriend, shortly thereafter. But yeah, it's still, it's that great acoustic, the gentle acoustic, and then right into the chorus where it starts to pick up. I love kind of the quiet and then the heavier chorus. So yeah, it's going to be my number 3.
Sounds like our first match. It's my number 3 as well.
Wow.
And I think it was funny listening to the song again. I'm even listening to it driving to work this morning. It was almost like they had that line about "let's do some living after we die." Like they're like, we need to revolve this whole song because this is the best line that we have in the song. We need to build up to this line, and then everything else, just slowly get to it. Again, I love the interplay of the guitars, like the burn out, down, couldn't drag me. I love that how they go up the neck of the guitar, then bring it back down. Just a great ballad. It shows that they could write some good ballads, and that Mick could sing them, and that there were some great musicians in the band too. You never really talk about the greatest drummer being Charlie Watts. You never really hear the greatest guitar player of all time being Keith Richards or Mick Taylor, but I mean they were really putting some good music behind the lyrics, which constitutes a great rock and roll band. And again, I love how the guitar sounds on this. I love that line about "let's do some living after we die," and then obviously the chorus is fantastic. It's one of those songs it could go on a long time and I wouldn't care because I like it that much. But it's only number 3.
Well, guess what? It's my number 3 too. We have a hat.
Oh, cool.
Interesting. Yeah, it's just a beautiful ballad. The lyrics could apply to those alive or dead. I mean, it's timeless. It's powerful. I love the emotion that Mick sings with. It was released first on the Burrito Deluxe, which is the Flying Burrito Brothers album. So I think it was written in '69. It came out with that, and then appears on this album. I like the lyrics. I have my freedom, but I don't have much time. Faith has been broken. Tears must be cried. Let's do some living after we die. I mean, good stuff. Great song. Number 3.
All right, now we're really getting into the meat of it. And, number 1 and number 2, and people always say this when they're doing a ranking. Well, my number 1 could be my number 2 in any given day, and but I'm pretty sure for me this is pretty set in stone. 1 and 2. My number 2 is going to be Brown Sugar, a song which if you came out with today, you'd be canceled immediately. So it's the lyric hasn't aged very well, but the riff is timeless. And I love it. It's one of it's one of these Keith Richards lyrics that's more, sophisticated than it appears on the surface, because, there's that, but then, and then he takes it up a note. So he's constantly shifting.
Yeah.
That little riff that he's got there. But yeah, I love it. Again, it's one of those tracks that one of the first songs I ever remember hearing, and I still love to hear it today. And it's all about Keith's guitar. It's Bobby Keys. I love him. His saxophone that he brings to it. I think there was a version with Eric Clapton that they actually put as a bonus. This is the I don't know if you call it like the expanded edition of Sticky Fingers, and they got a version of it with Eric Clapton. And I'm not a huge Eric Clapton guy, but it's still just kind of cool that they were in the studio together. But yeah, I mean, Brown Sugar is, one of the most iconic riffs of the 1970s. It's almost like their Satisfaction, of the 70s. Yeah. Just that memorable riff that everybody knows and everybody instantly recognizes.
And that was a classic opener for them for years. The opener of Brown Sugar, which I mean is a killer because, like you said, they know about that. Those first couple of chords,
right?
Yeah. So probably a surprise to people. My number 2, people might think is my number 1, is Dead Flowers. I love the song. I played the song a lot, on my guitar. again, it's already been talked about, the Graham Parsons thing, and the phony accent, but it's cool because the Stones have done other country songs live, like covers of other songs, and Mick puts on that country accent. I think Elton John did it a little bit too during these times, the early 70s, because they were influenced by that stuff so much, and it was kind of their little, pay our respects to those before us kind of thing. And again, another, there's a lot of drugs on this album. Dead Flowers being no exception, talking about the needle and the spoon, and then just Dead Flowers in itself as a drug reference. But again, great harmony. If you want to call the Stones ever having great harmony, I think it's great harmony in their own way. I love the chord progression of it, being the guitar player, and I love how they kind of end it with that long sustained note where he says grave and just kind of holds it and it fades out. It's a great song, and like I said, I knew it first from Townes Van Zandt doing it in the 80s or early 90s. It was one of those last few albums he did before he died of drugs. So it shows the Stones living their hard life and it's really well written and very catchy. So
Yep. My number 2 is Moonlight Mile, the closer. Just a haunting tune to me. It's atmospheric, very moody. I like Mick's gentle voice on this. He belts it out a little bit more towards the end. It's got that melancholy old twinge of sadness. It makes a perfect closer for this album. And I like when they mix it up because, they're known as a hard rock band, and they give you this slow paced stuff that it just works. And I think Mick's voice is behind a lot of it. He's a change of pace kind of guy, and he delivers big time here. Moonlight Mile is my number 2.
All right. Well, by process of elimination, I think you can guess my number 1 is Can't You Hear Me Knocking? And I know Sam ranked this lower, but I'm telling you, go to your stereo. When this video is over, go to the stereo, crank it up. That opening riff, I'm telling you, that opening riff will put hair on your balls. That's how strong. It is just blistering. I mean, what I will sometimes do is I'll, not because of, that, but I'll just like play that riff over and over because it is so killer. It's one of the strongest riffs ever. I just love it. It's so Chuck Berry. It's so Keith Richards. I love the fact that it's just a balls out rocker to begin with. And then all of a sudden it shifts, and now we're like Santana. Rolling Stones have suddenly, morphed into this like Latin rhythm band. And I love that transition to it.
Mm-hmm.
It kills me every single time. One of my all-time favorite Stones songs. It's just so sublime at the end there, where you've got that saxophone riff and you've got Keith Richards playing those chords in the background. For me, it's as good as anything the Stones ever did, and I stand by it. My number 1 off Sticky Fingers.
Very good.
I went into the video remembering that was Jeff's number 1.
Yeah,
from his ranking video of his 100 favorite albums. But it's a great song. I love how the guitar stops and then they hit that, can't you hear me? No, I can. Just like the music just kind of just puts it a stop, and you can really hear in that song how Charlie was kind of just a smidge off of everybody else because he was following Keith. It's a great song. It is. And then again, like process of elimination, my number 1, my favorite Rolling Stones song is Moonlight Mile. It's also Glenn Kellaway's favorite Rolling Stones song, but he didn't pay me to mention his name. No, I love it. Which is weird because a lot of times like that Asian sounding chord progression. I know Tom Petty has that song from Let Me Up, I've Had Enough. It's kind of got like the Asian sound to it, and not like on another album or two they dipped into those waters. But when it starts going into that huge close with like the cinematic, orchestra, the string section, and then Mick's singing on that song is just unbelievable at the end, where he just hits that line about, on down the road. Like, it's just so fantastic that he had to build himself up to that. And again, that's one of those, I don't know how many takes it took to get there. I can imagine it wasn't many, because I feel like his voice would have been shredded. The way that he finishes that song with the soul and the power that he had. And again, I love like that. It's not like a drop tuning on the guitar where the string is kind of loose that they're playing on the bass strings. I think it's just a fantastic song. It's not a rock song. It's not pop. I don't know what you would call it. I just think it's fantastic. And again, I think it's probably Mick's finest vocal, in my opinion. But then again, what do I know in my humble little apartment here in Virginia? So
very good. Well, the sign of a great album, one of the signs anyways, always has a great opener and a great closer. My closer was number 2 and my opener is number 1, Brown Sugar. This is arguably my favorite Rolling Stones song. I don't care about the canceled culture today. And this was recorded in 1971, and it's bold, it's daring, then it's in your face, man. It's rock and roll, provocative, right in the Stones wheelhouse. Yeah, woo, that whole nonsense. And it leaps out of the speakers, the opening, that beginning, it just jumps and you're in right away. And I like the lyrics here. I'm no schoolboy, but I know what I like. You should have heard her just around midnight. I mean, come on, that's sex, drugs, rock and roll, baby. And I'm in. So that's my number 1, and will always be number 1 off this album for me.
Yeah, timeless.
So very good. Now we got to do the tour of ranking the album, which it's hard to do on an album this great. 1 to 10, of course, 10 being perfection, 1 being horrific. Jeff, where are you going with this?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.
A solid 9. Okay.
Solid 9. Yeah.
How about you, Sam?
I'm gonna drop it a point lower and give it an 8, just because my number 10 and my number 9, I like the songs a lot, but they're not ones that stick with me. Again, with repeated listens, that might be the case, and it might go up in my book. And actually, this album didn't even make my top 100 albums. I don't think any Stones albums did. Again, it's because I'm so behind on my Stones listening, because I was one of these, punks in high school that said, I like the Beatles, I can't like the Stones.
Yeah.
And like I was just eating up everything the Beatles were doing and listening to them so much that the Stones I poo-pooed. But now, I've come to my senses and the gates have been opened to the Stones. So
there's a lot more out there too. So
I've got a bunch of it now, finally.
I'm going to go 9.5. I don't think it's perfect, but to me, it's a little bit a smidge above a 9 for me. It's my favorite album. I would say Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers are both 9.5s on my unique scale of ranking these things. So I have to be honest and truthful to myself. So I'm going to go 9.5. So
fair enough. Yeah, Let It Bleed is my favorite Rolling Stones album, and this is a close second.
Yeah, I think they're the 2 best. They're at their peak. I mean, a lot of people like Exile on Main Street, and it's not terrible, but I would sort of give it an 8.25. It's a little bit a notch down, considering it's a little bloated in parts.
Right.
Don't get mad at me, Stones fans. And Beggar's Banquet's no slouch either. I mean, come on, let's face it. Great album. And I like Some Girls. There's so many great albums.
Sure.
So
yeah, I agree. Well, this was part of that, that string of Jimmy Miller albums dating back to Beggar's Banquet, and then Exile on Main Street, and then Goat's Head Soup, I think was the last album they did with him.
yeah.
But what a great period for the Stones.
Tremendous.
Like we were saying earlier, you can't pigeonhole the Stones into being a 60s band or a 70s band. Like, obviously, like, the Beatles, you can say, the 60s. The Beach Boys, for the most part, I'd say it's 60s. The Stones, I mean, their peak was probably early 70s. I mean, they had some good albums in the 60s, but the 70s were really when they became a full on rock band, like you said at the beginning, Jeff.
Yeah.
So
No doubt about it. Well, we want to thank everybody for watching. Please leave your comments, rank your favorite Stones songs off this album. We'd like to have some feedback. Subscribe to Jeff Whitcher, Vinyl Destination. Always great for him to come on. Thanks, Jeff, for coming on with us. We appreciate it. Sam St. John. Thank you. Sam St. John, of course, subscribe to him. He needs to get to 600. That's his next plateau. So go over and give him a like, a subscribe, check his channel out, and look for future videos where we take on more classic albums. We have more good ones to come. So for Jeff and Sam, this is Rich. Thank you for watching, and take care, everybody. Bye.